Hey guys, Jay here, and in this video I am going to be comparing some CPU coolers. So I recently did a NAS build, and I bought a refurbished Pentium processor with it, so that didn't come with a CPU cooler. So I needed to buy one, and that got me to thinking, how much of a CPU cooler do I really need? And I kind of got along the same lines with my main PC. And I kind of got along the same thought with my main PC. So what I did, I got a Noctua NH9i, which is a flat heatsink that sits directly up against the processor with a 90mm fan on top of it. So it looks much like this thing, but it's square, higher quality heatsink, higher quality fan. And I also got a Noctua NH9i, which is one of the big heatsinks that sits on top of the CPU, or that stands vertically on top of the CPU with a big 120mm fan on the side of it. So I put each of those in my main PC / gaming rig, which is running a Core i7-4770 at its clock speed. I then ran a Prime 95 stress test on my CPU to see what temperature it gets up to and to find out how well each CPU cooler can keep the temperatures down. Okay, so here we have a screen grab for the stock Intel CPU cooler. I apologize that this is all there is. The video kind of got messed up for this one, so this will have to do. You can see that the minimum temperatures are a little bit high. Normally they would be more in the mid-30s, but because of when I started the core temp program, they hadn't come all the way down yet, and with the stock Intel CPU cooler, it does take a bit longer for it to bring the temperatures all the way down. So if we look at the maximum temperatures, we can see that they've hit 88, 89 on 2 of the cores, and 82 and 83 on the other 2. This was actually fairly early on in the stress test, and the temperatures were still climbing, but this was getting so close to just being a dangerous temperature that I didn't want to push it anymore. So I think it's safe to say that a stock CPU cooler that comes with your CPU will not cut it if you are going to be doing some really processor intensive work for more than 5 minutes straight or so. So the first one we're going to test is this little Noctua NH9i. I guess it's a 90mm fan on top of a flat heatsink. And we're going to be using the Noctua, the supplied Noctua thermal paste. When I did the test with the stock CPU cooler, it was using the Arctic Silver, so that might be worth noting, but I can't imagine that it's that much of a difference. So I took my graphics card out, and I'm no longer able to use my capture software, so hopefully this will suffice. If not, I'll just take a screenshot and put that in the video. So right now we're right at about 30, 35, same idle temperature as the stock CPU cooler. I'll run some tests and see how high it goes. It is definitely keeping those temperatures down. So we were almost hitting 90 before, and right now our max is just at 75. We're up to 83. Yeah, now we're getting a little warm. It's definitely keeping it cooler. Unlike the stock Intel CPU cooler, the Noctua NHL9i managed to keep the temperatures mostly out of the danger zone, with a highest recorded temperature of 83 degrees. The lowest temperatures recorded down around 30, and it's worth noting that it managed to get the temperatures from the highest to more closer to idle in a shorter amount of time than the stock CPU cooler did, which tended to kind of float around 60 degrees. So here's a quick time lapse of me putting together our final contender, the Noctua NH-U12S, which is a sizable heat sink with 10 heat pipes going through it down to the CPU, and a 120mm Noctua NFF12 pulse width modulated fan attached to it. This is going to be the cooler that stays inside of my main PC / gaming rig, so let's see how it does. So, we are running
And it still hasn't gotten completely up to speed yet, so it's not at its highest temperature. But already starting at idle, we're right around 30 degrees. And now we're running maxed out at highest temperature so far is 58 degrees. And it's just kind of hovering around there. So yeah, so that made a huge difference. Now this thing can comfortably be pushed to 100%. And the CPU temperature is kept under 60 degrees. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, the bigger CPU cooler does make a difference. Now, do you need it? Probably not. You could definitely get away with running the you could definitely get away with running one of these. But I mean, look at those temperatures. That's incredible.